Welcome to the Founder Experience, where we're charting the unpredictable waters of startup ventures. I'm Nathan Williams.
And I'm Alex Gutjahr.
A few years ago, someone invited me out for coffee asking to talk about his business idea.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went to coffee with this fellow. And I said, so what's the business idea and what are you looking for? And he said, I can't tell you.
Oh, that's hard.
Yeah. And I said, why not? And he said, well, it's just such a simple, brilliant idea. It's going to change the entire industry. I'm not even sure what industry, but he said it's going to change the entire industry. But I can't tell you because it's so simple, someone could steal it. And so I need you to sign an NDA. And I said, no. And this fellow who said, well, look, I really need your help. I need to get in front of investors and to get some investors in this idea. But it's just such a simple idea that's so revolutionary that I need to keep it secret. And you know how you look back at what you should have said years later,
Yeah.
and it's all perfect in your head. What I should have said is, well, my investors are also super secret. You know, that would have been funny. But I entertained this fellow for about 10 minutes to finish my coffee. And I said, well, look, I can't help you. I'm not signing an NDA for an idea because ideas are effectively worthless on their own. But a lot of people, when they get started in business, they think that they just need the perfect idea, right? If I could just come up with the perfect idea, then I would have a business and I would be wealthy and things would go very well for me. Yeah. And it's a very common misconception among people that haven't started businesses that the idea itself has value. And so that's what I wanted to bring this topic to you, Alex. Have you ever encountered this idea of ideas being valuable in and of themselves, and how have you encountered that in your careers?
I think it's similar. So first of all, did you ever find out what the idea was?
Never.
From too bad.
And
so there's nothing revolutionary out there.
No, yeah, we're just still waiting. He's waiting for someone to sign his NDA somewhere.
I see. Okay. So in terms of ideas, yeah, I think when I started, I think I was in a similar mindset. I thought, okay, it just needs to be the perfect idea, and you hold it that high, right? You come up with something. Okay, it has to be great, and then you get funding if you even want to do this. And these days, I think it's more about, okay, solving real problems, like even if they are niche, and just solving something which even might be unsexy. But I mean, the idea is always one part. The more important part is the execution, right? You saw this with Facebook. You could have an idea. What's the worth of the idea if you're not implementing it and bringing it to life? So yeah, that's what I want to say. It's a sort of procrastination, just coming up with something that's perfect and thinking about it before you even get started. So I think it's a little bit overvalued, coming up with the idea as opposed to just solving a real problem or your own need or however you go about generating business ideas in the broadest sense. But I can relate to that. I'd say it has changed over the last years.
So now I want to bring up a counterpoint. Because the thing is, this experience made me start thinking, and it made me ask myself, what types of ideas would be worth protecting? Or at what stage is it important to get NDAs in place? At what stage is an idea valuable? Because we often hear ideas are not valuable, it's the execution that matters, and this is mostly true. But there must be something there, is what I was thinking. And I started looking into it and thinking it through. And the first and most obvious point that I came up with is patents.
Yes.
So what is the difference between a patent and an idea? Well, they're the same thing, right? But once you get to the level of a patent application, you've fleshed out the idea a lot. It's not just hey, we should have Facebook for cats or
Mm.
whatever your crazy idea is. It starts to think about how you would implement Facebook for cats, what types of features it would need, what process would be
Mhm.
there. I mean, in Europe, you cannot patent software for the most part, but you can patent processes, you can patent uh, machinery or new inventions, and and this can take multiple ideas and put them together. And once you're at the point of saying how something will actually execute and how it will work,
Yeah.
that is a point where the idea itself may be valuable. And then the patent protection gives you intellectual property that has value. And so I think the difference is in the level of detail that you go into.
I think it's the what versus the how, right? What is like, what's the idea? What is it that you want to do? Like Facebook for cats, whatever. And how is how you've thought about it and how you come up with novel ideas of approaching something that maybe, or solving something that hasn't been solved before, potentially, right? So you want the kind of the implementation details that, depending on what you're trying to achieve, may be very complex, right? And then warrant, okay, it makes sense to have an NDA or keep it secret, because that's the tricky part, right? If other people would know those details, they get ahead quite quickly, right? It also depends on how much time you spend getting to that point and thinking through it.
Well, this brings up another important question, of which I think that there's two ways you can approach it. When or should you tell other people at all your idea? Should you tell them? And if so, when?
Yeah, what's your take? What's your take?
Honestly, for me, I'm in favor of telling people ideas.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a big fan of open book around the idea stage,
Mm-hmm.
because usually an idea that you have for a business or a new process, unless you're really an insider into a certain industry, it'll be incomplete. There's
Yes.
usually reasons why simple revolutionary ideas haven't been implemented yet. And and if you're not an insider, you don't know why that is. And the only
Yeah.
way to get feedback is to ask people. Um, on the other hand, there has been a lot of research that shows that the human brain treats um, telling someone about an idea with the same as successfully executing on an idea.
Yes.
So you do have a motivational problem that if you tell people your great ideas of what you're going to do, you are much less likely to effectively execute on these ideas. So it's a bit of a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation.
Yes, and it's funny because you could argue both ways, right? If you tell someone else, people will say, okay, now you committed yourself to doing this, and now you feel accountable to doing it, right? Because you told someone,
Mhm.
hey, I'm going to build this. Now I have to follow up. So there's the one line of thought, people that will tell you it's a good idea, just do it because now you're committed to doing this. But I agree, if you and I think it depends a little bit also on the personal motivation, right? If you feel like, okay, I want to I want to speak with someone about it and I get the appreciation, right? People saying, "Oh, this is so smart. This is such a great idea." Then that might actually backfire, because you feel like, "Okay, I got the appreciation. Why now bother to doing the hard thing that might even fail, mind you, right?" So I think it depends, and also generally on speaking with other people. You can, so I'm a fan of fail fast, right? We discussed this previously. So if you have a silly idea, you want someone to tell you it's a silly idea, right? Usually when I have an idea, no matter how crazy, I'm like, oh, I can see why this would work, and it's going to be great. And I actually
Why would an
did I
idea I had be
look
bad?
look, I had an idea, and it's actually funny because that idea I discussed with my sister, who also works in a startup, and I raised this idea. So I would I actually want to tell it to you, but you have to sign the NDA first, I'm afraid. So look, so what I did, I'm sharing the idea here. I don't care, but this is a good example. So I was looking. out of the window at one day and saw the garbage bin outside because they are being picked up every 2 weeks, right, by the garbage companies. And I thought, there are other people in my neighborhood who have where the bin is really full and they put stuff next to it, and then there are people where the bin is half empty because they are on vacation, etc. So they don't utilize it as much. So usually the people who end up with more trash have to go and dispose it, right, and usually pay for it. So I thought, so why not actually rent out the space in the bin? So you could have a kind of standardized format, which for me was shoe boxes, right? So you would say, okay, I have about like 10 shoe boxes space in my garbage can. And so someone could rent it and give me, I don't know, 50 cents per box, and then the platform makes a cut. So I was really thrilled. I thought about it. I would definitely use it, and people could just rent out the space. And I told my sister, and that was a reality check because that didn't go so well. So and I told it someone else, but the reaction was really, yeah, it wasn't what I had hoped for. So I thought, okay, maybe it's not such a good idea after all. So, and that's good, right? Because I'm super excited in that moment, and then at a very early stage, before I even spend more time that's potentially wasted, I want people to tell me, look, this doesn't make sense. And then you have, as you dabble with the idea and develop it, I think you can share more details, and then you are more selective who you talk to, right? Because I'm like, I just speak about it because, again, it's just a rough state. It's just a one sentence idea. Anyone could do it, right? But as you progress, then you might be more selective who you're talking with and the degree of details that you're willing to share with them.
One of the things that people don't take into account as well when evaluating ideas is how easy they are to implement. Okay.
Mhm.
So if you have an idea for a new garbage can that you can rent out boxes, right? That's a fairly easy idea to prototype, test out. If you've got an idea for software, same thing. But if you have a new idea for a new type of factory,
Mhm.
or if you have an idea for a new type of battleship that takes $1 billion and 20 years to build, or something,
Yep.
like if you want to build the Star Destroyer, if you want to get something out in orbit, you know, that's a much more complex and involved idea. And that's a different class of idea where you would need detailed designs and you would need patents. And the important thing that maybe those who haven't done patents in the past don't know is that if you disclose the idea in a patent publicly before you've done the patent application, you cannot patent it because it's considered public knowledge.
Yeah, I see.
Yeah. So, and this is a big problem, right? Because you don't want to spend time making a patent application, which is costly. You've got to defend the patent when it's filed. You have to explain it in very great detail, but you
Mhm.
have to do all of that without having validated it in the market, because as soon as you do, it's no longer patentable.
Yes, I see.
And the way that you can do this is you can take pieces of it, right? Like you have got maybe a patented piece of it
Mhm.
where it's a proprietary, it's a new process that you've come up with, but the market maybe is not the new process, hopefully, right? Like, so you can say, well, maybe people want a better factory, or we know that people want cheaper electricity or whatever. Um, but so you don't need to validate that people want electricity and they want it cheaper, or you don't
Yes.
need to validate that people want these type of widgets and they want them cheaper. What you want to do is you know that already, and so then you can just focus on the secret part, which is how to do it more effectively, right? And this is an important distinction, but it's important for people to know.
Yeah, I wouldn't know. And I actually, so as you said, for me, it's also easy to think about software solutions to problems, right? And I think that's gotten even easier for most people with the help of AI to just prototype something and then see, okay, you can validate it quickly even in the market. And I think that's a great thing. And I always had huge respect for anyone doing something in the hardware space. not just because it's like financially, etc., a different game how you do this, because you need a lot of upfront cash usually, depending, of course, on the scope. But a friend of mine was developing dongles that you could put into the car. Like if you have a car, underneath the steering wheel, there's this interface which you can plug into, which
Mhm.
usually the garages, etc., are using to get information from the car. And they've built a dongle which I think it was for fuel optimization back in the day. I think they changed that since. But you could just plug in. It would just you would get a recording of where you took the car, etc. You could record the fuel stops, like these kind of things, and it worked pretty well. And at one point, I just saw them in their office, and he showed me one of the first prototypes before it went out to the customers. And I saw this, and I was like, I don't understand how this works. Like how did you get this done? And he was like, yeah, I even sat down to design the circuits and whatnot. And I was like, I wouldn't even know where to start. I'm not a hardware person, and I find it still looks to me like wizardry, if like someone doing just magic, right? Now, honestly, I saw this and I thought I cannot even start to understand how or where this works, right? Or how I would approach it even. So I find it super fascinating, just as an aside. But I think especially for these kind of, I'm not sure if they filed for a patent. I would assume some, like at least for some
I would
part of
hope
it. Yeah. And that, again, they work well. And I think for these kind of businesses, it perfectly makes sense too, because you have such like a long R&D process, potentially upfront capital, etc. Right? You want to make sure it's somehow protected, and then not someone is able to steal the idea or copy it the next day. So I see why that makes sense, and especially in that environment.
A lot of people, one of the big challenges they have, let's take a look at the non-patentable ideas, right? Because
Hmm.
patentable, that's a whole thing, right? That's when you're doing research and looking through patent databases to see what else has been invented, make sure that someone hasn't already invented your thing yet.
Yeah.
Um, but for non-patentable ideas, right? The best advice that is out there that most startup founders will tell you is solve a problem, right? Find a problem, solve it. Don't just build something because you think it needs to exist or because you think it's a great idea. Find someone that has a pain point, solve their pain point. But one thing that is very difficult for first time founders and for maybe even second time founders is if you find someone and they've got a pain point, asking them why they have the pain point and figuring out exactly what the cause of the pain is. And the example that I like to give is you have to be like a doctor. If someone goes to the doctor and their arm hurts, the doctor doesn't say, "Oh, then I'll give you the arm hurt medicine." Right?
That's a
So
mouthful. The arm hurts
you
medicine.
want the arm hurt medicine? No, you've got to figure out why. Is your bone
Yes.
broken? Do you have tendonitis? If you hurt your muscle, like where does it hurt? You have to ask the questions to get at the root cause. And in the same way, if someone is having problems, like I hate Amazon, okay, I'll make the
Yeah.
anti-Amazon. Why? Why is it a problem? Is it that it's too expensive? Is that it hard to use? Is it that it's too crowded? Who are you anyway? Are you trying to buy off of Amazon or sell on it? Like, and asking the questions. This comes back to what we've talked about many times before. Knowing what questions to ask helps you get at the why. Right? What is really the problem that your customers face? And yeah, this is key, and it's also key to getting out of your own head. A lot of people start their businesses because they want to build something themselves. They want to express themselves in the world like an
Yeah.
artist. Um, but that's the fun part. That's the easy part. The hard part is not building what you want to build. The hard part is figuring out what someone else wants to exist and is willing to pay for, and then building that. Because that's less exciting because that's less about you.
Yeah, but you have to be at least self-aware to understand your own motivation, right? As we discussed before, do you want the fame, right? Is it something that you're doing for
Oh, I want the
yourself and you
fame.
don't? Uh, is that is that the motivation? You don't care so much about the idea, but if you start doing this, you're right. You shouldn't solve the symptoms, but really understand what's the problem that you want to solve, and it even goes beyond that, right? That's not a one-off question. So you may get closer to the actual problem, but from there, still things may evolve, right? This is something that I'm doing with a lot of fun still. When for our current platform, I'm speaking to the users directly, like in support, right? Because even if you think you're solving the right problem, you still have to make sure that it remains true, right? As your product, whatever that is, evolves, that you're still working on the right things. And I'm very surprised when I speak to someone and I tell them, look, this is how we intended this to be or work. And they tell me, yeah, I worked around it. And that's quite interesting because again, that's not, you don't start with the idea or you stop there. You just, so you just continue, right? Even once you had the initial idea and then still see if you're solving the right problems.
It's really important to always be self-aware like this because people do get married to their ideas. They
Mhm.
have the idea and then they want it to exist. But once it meets reality, you get a very quick check as to whether the market thinks the same as you do.
That's it for this episode of The Founder Experience. If you enjoyed it, do us a favor, hit subscribe wherever you are listening, whether that's Spotify, YouTube, or your favorite podcast app. If you've got a second, leave a rating or a review. It really helps. And you can find more episodes and behind-the-scenes stuff on our website, founderexperience.fm. And if you've got feedback or business ideas that you want us to talk about, shoot us a message at hello@founderexperience.fm. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks for hanging out. We'll catch you next time.